Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Friday, December 16th. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last 24 hours, we've had widespread precipitation in most areas of the Great Basin. The heaviest areas have been in the Sierra Nevada mountains and also across northern Nevada up into Idaho and northern Utah, with some areas of precipitation also over the southern portion of the Great Basin. Over the last 7 days, however, we've had significant precipitation over the northern half of the Great Basin and in the Sierra, which has been well above normal for this week, at least over the last 7 days. If we look at over the last 30 days, this precipitation again has been focused over the northern half of the Great Basin and parts of Utah, and has been near to above normal over parts of the Sierra into northern Nevada, Utah, up into Wyoming, and parts of southern Idaho. However, over southern Nevada and southern areas of the Great Basin into the Arizona Strip, we've seen well below normal precipitation over the last 30 days. The water vapor satellite loop from this morning shows a cold area of low pressure now dropping into northern areas of the Great Basin, which was responsible for very windy conditions yesterday over the western half of the basin, and will continue to provide very windy conditions over much of the eastern two-thirds of the area, along with very cold temperatures and precipitation already this morning over parts of Nevada, Idaho, into Utah. We will see some significant amounts of precipitation, especially over the eastern half of the Great Basin today. Now we'll look at the ventilation index for today, which is quite high across most of the area with the stronger winds that will continue today, with the exception of parts of Wyoming into central Idaho where the winds won't be quite as strong. Looking at the individual components of the ventilation index, the transport winds on the left show these very strong winds across much of the area, with the strongest winds today over southern and eastern areas of the Great Basin, where wind gusts will exceed 55 or 60 miles per hour at times. Further west, where we saw the stronger winds over the last 36 hours, we'll still see breezy winds, but wind gusts will be between 30 and 40 miles per hour in many areas. Mixing heights will also remain relatively high over the southern half of the Great Basin, and quite a bit lower with the colder temperatures and precipitation moving across the north. As we move into tomorrow, the storm system moves off to the east. We may still see some showers over the northern portion of the Great Basin, but much drier air moves into most of Nevada, Utah, and the Arizona Strip with northwest winds. Therefore, the ventilation index will be decreasing significantly over the northern and western areas and still remain quite good over the southern and eastern areas of the Great Basin due to the stronger winds. Looking at the winds on Saturday on the left, you can still see these gusty winds, although not as strong as today, but still will be above 40 or 50 miles per hour at times across parts of Utah into the Arizona Strip, and quite a bit lower as you move further north and west. Mixing heights will also decrease significantly over much of the area, with the exception of Utah, the Arizona Strip, and southern Nevada, which mixing heights will still remain quite high. As we move into Sunday, that storm system is now well off to the east, and we see more of a shift of wind to the north or northeast, with still dry conditions over much of the Great Basin, with the exception of maybe a few showers over the central Idaho mountains. Dispersion will remain quite poor in most areas, with the exception of some breezy north winds over the far south, which will improve dispersion. On Sunday, again, those winds decrease in most areas with the exception of the far south, along with mixing heights very low, with the exception over parts of southern Utah into the Arizona Strip where they will be more in the moderate range. Looking at the Utah Forecast Clearing Index, as we've already discussed, very good dispersion and high clearing indices today across all of Utah with those strong winds, but you will see conditions deteriorate rapidly as we go towards later in the weekend, with very low clearing indices expected on Sunday. Looking at the overall forecast amounts of precipitation, you can see in this image over an inch or inch and a half of total precipitation expected over the higher elevations of Utah, with areas further west and north seeing just under an inch. Most of this will be falling as snow, so we can expect 1 to 2 feet or more of snow in some areas of the high elevations of Utah. As we go into next week, on Monday, the shift of storm systems will be more focused to the northern half of the Great Basin, with showers returning to Idaho and still dry conditions in the far south. Ventilation indices will still remain quite low across most of the area. By Tuesday, that storm system starts to move eastward, with some precipitation spreading into the northern portion of Nevada or Utah, but still very dry over southern areas, with poor dispersion expected across most of the Great Basin. On Wednesday, we see drier conditions spread across all areas of the Great Basin, at least briefly. However, still with lighter winds and a weak ridge of high pressure moving in, we'll still see fairly low ventilation indices, at least through the middle of next week. As we go into Thursday and we start to see another storm system move into the west coast, winds will be increasing along with precipitation spreading a little bit further east and south. Therefore, we'll see better dispersion across parts of the west and northern areas of the Great Basin. As we look at days 4 and 5 for total amounts of precipitation expected, which takes us into Monday through Wednesday next week, and again you can see that focus of precipitation is mainly into the northern areas. We still could see quite a good amount of new snowfall in the higher elevations of Idaho, with over 1 to 2 feet, at least in the early part of next week. As we go towards the later portion of December, we will continue to see below normal temperatures and above normal precipitation across at least the northern half of the Great Basin, with more normal conditions further south. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.